Hello again and welcome back to another episode of Adding Game Sounds, where today we're going to be looking at adding some sounds to the menu of the 2D game kit. So we want to make sure we hear sounds whenever we press a button or flick through the menus. This idea was suggested to me by a commenter by the name of SW, or a subscriber I should say. So thanks very much for the comment, that was really helpful. If you have any ideas or any suggestions that you'd like to see from this channel, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Before we start, if you'd be interested in receiving an email from me about once a week on all things game audio, so that could be on FMOD or Unity, or something on sound design perhaps, then you might be interested in signing up to the Scott Game Sounds newsletter. I'll have a link for that underneath this video, or you can come to my website, again I'll have a link for that, and you can sign up from there. Recently we've been talking about the game have been working on, Unspottable, where I did some sound design for that, and I've just been sharing some behind the scenes and things I've learnt on it. So if that interests you, feel free to sign up. Okay, so let's crack on. Now, we are looking at the menus of the 2D game kit, like I said earlier. We want to add some sounds to the buttons of the menus, and we also want to hear sounds when we open and close the menus, things like that. So what I'm going to do to start off is I'm going to jump into FMOD, because I've already pre-prepared some FMOD events which I'm going to use, and they're dead easy to set up, so you can do the same as well. All I did is I opened up my audio bin, which I'll do for you right now. Went to the UI folder and I found all of these sounds. So they're menu button 01, menu button 02. They're basically sounds for the menu. So what I've done is I've created 5 events for each of these audio files. So as you can see here on the left in my events tab, I've got one for the menu button 1, 2, menu button back, confirm and start. And what I've done is I've assigned them all to my master bank, which we've done loads of times before. And yeah, other than just each event having a different sound, there's not much to explain about the events. They're all 2D, so there's no spatialized distance attenuation, volume or panning to worry about. Nice and easy. So yeah, feel free to set up those events yourself in your FMOD project if you're following along. Just to double check, I'm going to quickly save my project and press F7 to build my new bank files to make sure these events are copied over into my Unity project. Now, before we start adding sounds to the menus, we need to understand how the menus actually work in this game. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to play this scene. So this, if I quickly go through the project tab and find where my scenes are, here we are. So I think this scene we're looking at is called Zone 1. What I'm going to do is play it to you. I'm going to open up the menu, and what I would like you to do is pay attention to what happens in the hierarchy tab, as something interesting is going to happen when I open up the menu. Okay, so here I am in the game. As you can see, I can walk around and there's not much going on. So in the hierarchy tab, we've got basically 2 kind of scenes open on top of each other. The first is called Zone 1, and inside Zone 1 is all the game objects that basically make up this level. So basically everything you can see on the screen right now, and also game objects that are holding scripts and code and audio and animations and stuff. It's all there in Zone 1. Then in Don't Destroy on Load, there's some extra game objects that are basically going to be carried over between scenes. When we enter Zone 2, everything in Zone 1 is going to be unloaded from the game, and then all the new assets are going to be loaded in with the Zone 2 scene. But these ones under Don't Destroy are going to be preserved, okay? So we've got kind of 2 scenes on top of each other, which make up this level that we're looking at right now. But if I go into the game and I press Escape, which is the button to open up the menu, you can see we've got a new scene that's popped up called UI Menus. Now, every game kind of handles their UI elements and their menus and stuff differently, but for the 2D game kit, what they've done is created a dedicated scene for the menu. And the idea is that no matter what scene you're in, or what level I should say, that could be Zone 1, 2, 3, 5, etc., you can, by pressing Escape, you'll load up this scene called UI Menus and you'll get the same menu, if that makes sense. So if we quickly expand the scene in the hierarchy tab, you can see we've got a couple of game objects. The one we're going to be focusing on is the options canvas object, as that basically holds all of the assets to do with the menu itself, which you can see here. Event system, we don't really need to worry about too much. Now let's quickly, I'm just going to expand my game for a second, move that out of the way, so we can just take a look at how the menu works. So this is it. At the moment, this is like the main paused section of the menu, and we've got a few options. We can click on the options menu, restart the level, we can quit, or we can just close the menu by pressing that X button. If I open options, we've got more menus for audio, controls, and a back button. So let's quickly open up the audio menu. For this, we've got some audio sliders. Now, we're not going to be looking at these sliders in this lesson. I'm going to save that for another one, because obviously we'd like to one day hook these sliders up to our FMOD project, so they actually control our audio, so we can turn the master volume down, music down, and the sound effects down. But for now, we're just going to look at adding sounds to the actual buttons and interacting with the menu. So we won't worry about the sliders, but the back button we'll obviously need the sound for. There's also a controls menu. This doesn't really have anything you can change. It's literally just a list of the controls. So that's a nice easy one. And that's pretty much it. It's a small menu, and yeah, like I said, this same menu we can open up by pressing escape in any other sort of level in this game, because what the game is going to do for us, thanks to the script that's been written, the code that's been written by the developers of the 2D Game Kit, is it's going to load in that scene which contains a copy of the entire menu. So the next thing I'd like to show you is basically the prefab file, the actual file that scene is kind of loading a copy of into our game. So if in your project tab, if you go to 2D Game Kit, prefabs, UI prefabs, and options canvas, that's the name, remember, of the game object we just saw earlier. If you hit open prefab, we can then see the menu again. Aha! So this is, like I said, this is the kind of file that's going to be in the game that we're loading in whenever we press pause. The other thing I'd like to show you is the actual scene that we just saw open up, the UI menu scene. So if I quickly leave this prefab here and go to the assets folder again, 2D Game Kit, I'm going to go scenes, UI, and then open up UI menus again. So this is, we can see the menu again. As you can see, there's nothing in the background. This is its own entire scene that we loaded on top of our level, which we had in the background. And again, you can see that we've got the options canvas object. This time it's in blue text because this scene contains a copy of that prefab file I just showed you. This isn't the original file. Now, if you're working on a game that isn't this one, the 2D Game Kit, you might find that the menus work a little bit differently to this. They might, for example, not have their own scene containing a copy of the prefab which holds the menu. Your game might just load the menu in from the prefab directly. There could be loads of reasons, but I thought it was important to share with you that this is how the 2D Game Kit does it, because obviously that's going to affect how we start adding sounds to the menu. Now, originally my plan for this was to add or make changes to the original prefab of the options canvas object, but to be honest, in testing for this video, I found that whilst some changes would save and carry over, some of them wouldn't, and I'd have to come into this scene and then also add the same changes to this copy of the prefab. So what I think I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to just add or make changes to this instance of the options canvas object. So this isn't the original file, this is a copy of it that when we press escape, the UI menus will load in for us, okay? And then that way all the changes should be saved and carried over for us. If you like, you can work on the original prefab, but what's handy about working on this is we do have the option to save any changes to that original prefab file. So I'm hoping we don't get any issues. All the changes we make will be carried over into the game and we should hear them first time. That's the plan anyway. Okay, so now that we understand the menus, it's time to add some sounds to them. Now the first sound I'd like to add is just a sound to indicate that we've opened up the menu. So whenever we press escape, we should hear this sound. What I'm going to do is, with the options canvas object selected, I'm just going to minimize all of these components that are attached to it because we don't need to worry about these. And then what I'm going to do is add a component of my own. I'm going to add this one, trigger audio. Now this is a script or a component that we created a few episodes back. I think it was in episode 12. I'll have a link for that somewhere on this screen so you can watch that episode. But what I'll do is I'll quickly run through the script with you. This is it here. And it's really nice and easy. If you want to copy this off the screen, you can, or I'll have a copy of this script on my website, and again, a link to it underneath, so you don't have to pause the video. You can just copy and paste, bang, you've got it in Visual Studio. So this is the script, and I'll just quickly run it through with you, just so you understand how it works. It's nice and easy. The first thing on the script is this. This is a public string called event. I've also added this FMOD Unity.eventRef attribute to it. So what these two allow us to do is first it will display that variable on the actual component. So there you can see event is there. And then thanks to the attribute that we've added, what I can do is I can search for the FMOD event I'd like to use. So I'm just going to type in UI and I'm going to select one of those events I created. What should we go for? I think I'm going to go for the menu button start event. That feels kind of, from what I heard anyway, it sounds like a kind of nice sound to use for this. Yeah, so that's that done. Let's go back into the script. Then what we've got is another variable called play on awake. Now this is a Boolean, so we know this can only ever be true or false. Then if we look at the start function, which we know is going to run on the very first frame that this script is active for, we can see that it's saying if play on awake is true, then trigger this function here, play one shot. That function is this function here. And inside the function, you can see I've written fmodunity.runtimemanager.play one shot attached. And inside the brackets, it's got that variable event. So basically, long story short, what this is going to do is it's going to check to see if play on awake is true. And if it is, it's going to play this function straight away, play one shot, which in turn is going to trigger whatever event we selected to play at the location of the game object that we've attached this script to. Now, we're attaching this script to the menu, right? So it doesn't really matter. The menu, well, the sound itself is going to be 2D, so it doesn't really matter where we hear it from. So for simplicity's sake, I've just attached the sound to this menu. Makes sense, right? Nice and easy. So yeah, let's go back into Unity. So now if I click this button here, play on awake, that is basically going to tell the script to play this event as soon as this script is active. And remember, the script's going to be active at the same time that the game object's going to be active. And the game object's going to be active at the same time as the UI menu scene is going to be active, which is when I press escape. So long story short, press escape, you hear the sound, nice and easy. Now notice in the top left corner, where our scene is, UI menus, there's a little asterisk next to it. That basically means changes have been made to it, but they haven't been saved. So what I'm going to do is hit Control S, and that gets rid of the asterisk, so changes have been saved. Next, let's go back into our scenes folder in the project tab. Let's open up Zone 1 one more time, and I'm just going to quickly test our menu. So when I press escape, should hear the sound. Okay, moment of truth. Brilliant, cool, nice and easy start. Okay, so let's open that scene up again. So again, assets, 2D game kit, scenes, UI, and UI menus. Now the next sound I'd like to add is the sound of the menu closing, right? And to do that, we want to attach it to this button here, the X button. Now there's quite a few copies of this X button. So to understand how this works, we're going to need to open up the actual options canvas, look at the children objects attached to it, and understand how they work essentially. Now, as you can see, underneath options canvas, there are 4 more objects called canvases. We've got a pause canvas, options canvas, control canvas, and audio canvas. And these basically represent the parts of the menu. So as you can see in the game scene, in fact, can I show it in the scene tab? That might be a bit easier. Yes, I can. Okay, so let me quickly zoom out. So as you can see right now, we are looking at the main paused part of the menu. So that's under the pause canvas. This object here is basically holding all of the assets that you can see on screen now. So if I quickly disable this object, pause canvas, you can see it disappears. But if I then open, or enable rather, the options canvas object, now the options menu appears, right? So the idea is, the way this menu works is that every time we click on one of these buttons, let's say we click on audio, the current canvas is going to be disabled, and then the canvas represented by that button, or the button rather that represents the canvas, is going to be enabled, so audio would appear, okay? What this means is that each of these canvases have their own X buttons. So if we're going to add a sound to it, we can't just add it to one of them, we have to add it to all of them. Okay, so I'm quickly going to disable the audio canvas and just re-enable the pause canvas, as that's how it needs to start whenever we open up the menu. Right, so let's take a look at those close buttons. So what we need to do is open up the pause canvas and understand it a bit better. So underneath the pause canvas, we have another object, BG, attached to it. This object basically just holds an image for the background. Nothing to worry about there. But within it, it also holds all of the other buttons, or sorry, all of the other objects that represent the buttons. So let's expand that. I'm just going to move over the hierarchy. And here we go. So we have options button canvas, restart button canvas, back button canvas, and UI close button. Here we go. So this is what we want to focus on. Now in Unity, there is a component called button, which you can see here. It's basically a nice and easy way that you can set up interactable buttons in your game. By attaching this component to a 2D image or a piece of UI in your game, you can not only detect when a mouse clicks on it, but you can also tell it to perform specific behavior. So this is obviously what we want to focus on, to tell the button to play a sound when it's pressed. Now, if you look at the bottom of the button component, you'll see this section here called onClick. Now, this is a Unity event, which we've looked at before. What we can do is, using this Unity event, trigger functions from within other scripts to perform and do whatever we tell them to. Okay, so to tell this button to play our sound, we need to add our script to it again. So let's once again scroll down, let's go add component, trigger audio, and this time let's search for a different one of our events. So I'm going to go UI, and I'm going to select the menu back event this time. I think you can see that, hopefully. And yeah, let's. So then what we need to do is go to the onClick Unity event, and we need to tell it to basically trigger that function for us, which the function was play one shot. So to add some more behavior to a Unity event, to tell it to do something else, what you need to do is press the little plus button underneath it and go add to list. Next, you need to tell it what it is you'd like to happen, or what function you'd like to trigger. To do that, you need to tell it the game object that the script is attached to, that the function is within, if that makes sense. So for example, our function is within the trigger audio script, which is attached to the UI close button game object. So let's drag the game object over to this little box here. Then let's open this drop down menu and select trigger audio. That's the name of the script. And you can't see, hold on, whoa. Let's move my webcams just to make sure you can see that. Do that one more time. So you want to select the play one shot function. The reason why this is appearing, by the way, that the Unity event recognizes play one shot, if I go back to the script, is because it's been made public. Without that, we wouldn't be able to find it. It wouldn't appear in that drop-down menu. Okay, so let's save our changes by pressing Control S if you're on a PC, or Command S if you're on a Mac. And yeah, let's open up that scene again. So let's go back to Scenes, Zone 1, and play it, and let's do another little test. Okay, so if I press Escape, we hear the open sound. And if I press the X button, we hear the close button sound. Brilliant. And let me open up the menu one more time. If I then go to the options menu, or open up that options canvas object we looked at, and press the X button, we don't hear the sound. Now this is because, like I said earlier, each of those menus, each of those kind of sub menus, options, audio, etc., they own have their own copy of that button. So we need to tell each of those to also play the sound. So let's end the game there. Let's go back to that scene. So under scenes, go UI, UI menus, and let's open up the options canvas again. So we've just done the pause canvas. Let's now go to the options canvas, BG, and select its own version of the UI close button. And as you can see, it's pretty much laid out the exact same way. So we're going to do the exact same thing. Add component, trigger audio, select the event we would like it to play. So let's go UI, and let's go menu button back. Then on the onClick Unity event on the button component, let's press the little plus icon. Let's drag over the game object the script is attached to, then select the script, and then select the function play one shot. And yeah, what you're going to want to do is go through basically all of these canvases and find the UI close button and do that process. So I'm going to quickly do that now off screen. Okay, last one. There we go. So I've just finished adding it to all of my back buttons. Now I'm going to save the scene and test it one more time. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to test it in a different scene. This time I'm going to go to zone 2, just to show you that all these changes we're making to this object, they're going to be loaded in no matter what scene we use. So let's quickly play this and give it a test. Okay, we're in scene 2 now, so let's press escape. And this time let's open up the audio menu and let's press back. We hear the sound, brilliant. Let's also go options and do it. Yep. And I think there's one more, isn't there? Options. Wait, is there? Oh, controls, that's it. Controls. Yes, great. So we hear all the sounds. One more sound, or one more instance of that sound we need to add is when we press escape. And then escape again. To close it, we don't hear the sound, so let's change that now. Okay, so I'm back in the UI menu scene. What I'm going to do is go back to the options canvas object. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the trigger audio component to it a second time. And I'm also going to select that same event, which was UI, menu button back. Now at the moment, there's no way for me to, just by using this script, tell it to play the event when the menu closes. But don't worry, I'm going to change that now. So let's open up the script and let's make some changes to it. So we've got a function that plays our play one shot function and therefore our event whenever the basically script is first activated. The first scene, i.e. whenever we pause. But we want one to play whenever the scene is ended, right? Now what we can do is use the onDestroy function. So I'm just going to type onDestroy. And it appears for us there. Yeah, so the onDestroy function, it triggers automatically whenever the object that this script is attached to is destroyed. Now it's going to be destroyed and got rid of whenever we close the menu and by extension end this scene. It's going to close the options canvas object, destroy it, and therefore trigger the function in our script, okay? So what I want to do is basically copy what I've got in the start function, but with a new variable. So I'm going to create a public variable called a public Boolean variable. So it's going to be either true or false. And remember, by making it public, it's going to be displayed in Unity. So we can select what we want it to be from there. And we'll call this play on destroy, like that. Then what I'm going to do is in the onDestroy function, I'm going to create an if statement. And I'm going to type if play on destroy. So if our variable we've just created, that Boolean, if it's true, then we want to trigger the play one shot function. There we go. So yeah, like I said, it just works the same as the start function. If play on destroy is true, it's going to trigger this function to play and thus our sound. So I'm going to save that. And by the way, if you're copying this script off of the website, you should have already have these changes. And then jump back into Unity. And we should see, once the script's compiled, we should see that variable appear underneath play on awake. Brilliant, there we go. So play on destroy has appeared. So I'm going to tick it for the second instance of the trigger audio script, the one where we've added the menu button back event to. So now whenever we press escape and destroy this object, we should hear that sound. But obviously, we need to test it first. Okay, I'm in zone 3 now, and I maximised it just for funsies. And let's press escape. Yep, and let's press escape one more time. We hear the sound. And let's just double check that will happen from any menu. Let's just go controls and press escape. Yes, works perfectly. So far so good, we're doing really well. Now I think we need to add some sounds to these buttons here. So just like with the close button, each of the canvases that contain the kind of sections of the menu, the pause bit, the options bit, audio, etc., they all have their own buttons in them, right? So we need to go through all of those canvases and add some sounds to them. So let's start with the pause canvas for now. So let's open it up again. So obviously last time we were looking at the UI close button, which is here. To find these individual buttons, options, restart level, and quit, we need to open up these canvases. So I'm guessing the options button is going to be under this canvas. We can tell, by the way, that this isn't a button itself because it doesn't have that button component in the inspector. So let's open it up. Let's select this object, UI button, and here we go. We could see the button components. This is what we want to focus on. So let's scroll down and we're going to do the same thing we did for the close button. Let's add our trigger audio script. Let's select an event. What one shall we go for this? I think we're going to go for, hopefully you can see that, menu button confirm. And we don't want it to play on awake or on destroy. we want it to play with the buttons. Let's just, oh wait, I needed that. Let's create another, let's add to the list of the on-click Unity event. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to select the game object that we've attached our script to, which is now the UI button object. So add it to there. Then select the script, which is trigger audio, and the function play one shot. Now I'm going to quickly do this process again off screen. But before I do, I'll just quickly guide you through all of the buttons, just so you know, so hopefully you don't miss any. So we've got a button in each of these canvas here, options, restart, and back. So if you open up the restart back canvas and the back button canvas, you've got two more UI button objects there, again, with the button component. So just go and add the trigger audio script to those. Let's then close the pause canvas. If we open the options canvas, open up BG, and then you can see we've got 3 more canvases. Each of these are going to contain a button as well. So if we open up all 3 of these, we've got 3 more buttons that need the script to. Close that. Control, I think the control canvas only has 1 button, so that's a bit easier. Yeah, so it's this one here. So if you open up the back button canvas, you just need to add a sound to the UI button. Again, just add the script to it. And then finally, I think audio canvas again, if we open that up, only has, so it has 1 button. These are all sliders. We don't want to focus on them. It's just this one here, back button canvas. So again, open it up, select the UI button, and add the script to. So again, I'm going to do that off screen, and I'll let you know once I've finished. Okay, so I'm all finished adding sounds to my buttons. Once you have 2, go ahead and save your scene, and let's give this another test. Okay, so I'm going to hit escape. There we go. Let's press options. We hear a sound, audio. We hear a sound, back. We hear a sound. Actually, what I might do for those back buttons, I might also change the sound that they play to match this sound, the actual UI back sound. But other than that, works pretty well. I can press restart level. It makes a sound. Great. Okay, so there's one more sound I'd like to add to our menu. I want to play a sound whenever we flick between a button or an option of a button before we actually press it. So when we hover our mouse over a new one. And let me show you why I want to do that. If I press escape, open up our menu. Let me zoom in so we can see it in the scene tab. And yeah, if I hover my mouse over one of the buttons, you can see it changes. It sort of highlights it in grey, right? So I want to play a sound whenever this happens. So we obviously need to understand why or how this is happening for us to do that. Now, if I open up my scene, my UI menu scene, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that button. So we're going to go options canvas, pause canvas, BG, and I'm going to find the options button canvas. There we go. So this is the button for the, or this is the game object that represents the options button. Now, over on the inspector, above the component called button, we've got another component called image. And as you can see, the image that it's loaded or is using to display for us for this button is called start menu underscore button default, okay? But watch what happens if I hover my mouse over the options button. There you go, it changes to a new image. So now it's showing a completely different image called start menu underscore button highlighted. In fact, if I quickly move my webcam one more time, you can even see that as I hover over in the bottom right corner, you can see that image being changed, flipped between the two. Now this is happening thanks to an animation. If we scroll down the UI button in the inspector tab, underneath our button component, you should find a component called animator. And in animator there is a field called controller, and inside the field is a file called start button. Now if we double click on that, we should be brought to it in both the animator tab of Unity, and you should also be able to find the file, or Unity should display that file in the project tab for you. What this is a type of controller. These controllers basically allow you to flip between specific animations for certain game objects. So for example, say you had a character and you wanted to change from their idle animation to their running animation, you would use one of these, a controller dedicated to the player's animation, to switch between the two whenever certain things happen in the game to justify those changes. So for example, when the player presses W, you want to go from an idle animation to a running animation. These controllers kind of detect those changes. Now I'll try and adjust my screen a bit so you can hopefully see everything. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, so this is the controller for the buttons essentially, right? The buttons in our menu. As you can see, these are the sort of 2 that we want to focus on, normal and highlighted. So this animation, whilst there's nothing really going on, this happens whenever there's kind of nothing going on. Whenever we've not got our mouse over the button or we haven't pressed it, this animation, which is just an image being shown one frame, which is why that little blue bar is going crazy, because it's showing an image, a single image each frame. This is the animation that's active whilst there's nothing going on. But if I hover my mouse over the button, you can see it switches to the highlighted animation. So that's kind of what we want to focus on. We want to find a way of telling our game to play a sound when this change is made. I'm going to quickly end the game here so we can take a look at this controller in a bit more detail. By the way, if you don't have the animator tab, I believe you can go to Window, and if you have a dig through here, you should be able to find the animator window. So if you go Animation and Animator, so that's how you find it. But anyway, what we want to do is select the highlighted section of this controller, and we want to add some behavior to it. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail as to how these controllers work. If you are interested in setting up your own controllers and learning how they kind of switch between different animations, but I will have some links to videos in the description if you do want to learn a bit more about them. They'll take you to some videos from some other YouTubers who know this a bit better than I do. But like I said, what we want to do is add some behavior. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new script specifically for this animation. So I'm going to go New Script, and because I want this to kind of work or play the role of our trigger audio script we had earlier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it trigger audio animation. Now, the reason why we can't use that same script is because when it comes to these controllers, the C# scripts are kind of set up differently. You can't use the same sort of scripts. And as we open this script up, you'll see how it differs from a traditional one. Okay, there we go. So the script has been created. What I now want to do, just for organization's sake, is I'm just going to go to the main folder called Assets in my Project tab. I'm going to find that script we've just created, because I think this is where it's dumped it. Yes, here we go, trigger audio animation. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it into my FMOD folder. So I'm going to go 2D Game Kit, just for organization's sake. 2D Game Kit, then I think it's under Scripts, so drag it into Scripts. There we go, once that's done, we want to... Oh, I've lost it, Scripts. There we go. We want to then drag it into Audio. So it might take a few seconds in between dragging this script in between folders, just for Unity to catch up. Then once it's done that, here it is, trigger audio animation. I'm going to drag it into my FMOD scripts folder, just like that. And there we go, it's in there. That wasn't really too necessary or important. Again, I just wanted to try and organize this a bit better. Okay, so let's go back to the highlighted section in our controller. And let's, well, we can, since I've got it open here, I can open it either way. But I'm going to open up that, open up that script we created. I'm going to right click, click Edit Script. Okay, so right off the bat, you can see it looks a lot different to how our scripts normally look like when we create new ones. And the reason why, well, other than all of this stuff has been kind of pre-written by Unity to be presented whenever we open up one of these types of scripts, the main reason why this script is different is because it inherits from a different class to our normal scripts. If I quickly go back to Trigger Audio, you can see that the class Trigger Audio that we created when we first made this script inherits its API and therefore all the kind of functions that we can use, for example, the start function and on destroy, all these kind of automatic ones that run with Unity. It inherits all of that from this class here called mono behavior. Inside here is where all of those scripts, all those functions were kind of first declared and kind of told to perform in specific ways. So for example, the start function, we know that it runs on the first frame that the script is active for. Well, it doesn't happen by magic. It's thanks to this class here that we're able to use that start function and that it does that. So trigger audio animation, because it inherits from this class, state machine behavior, we can't use the same functions. We can't use the start function here. But thankfully, this has its own kind of start function, and it's this one here called on state enter. So whenever a transition happens from one animation to the current one that you're editing, which is the highlighted animation that we've attached the script to, this function will fire and do whatever we tell it to, which is going to be play a sound, right? So the first thing we need to do is enable it. Right now it's been commented out, so it's not going to do anything. So if we remove these green lines, on lines 8, 9, 10, and 11. Oh, this one here. There we go. So now we can use it. Okay, so whilst these scripts are different from our traditional ones, they inherit from a different class. Thankfully, FMOD's API works for both, so we can still do things like play a one-shot, which is what we want to do. So let's type in fmod unity.runtime manager dot play one shot. I'm going to go for, and then give it 2 brackets and a semicolon. Now we want an event to tell this one shot to play, so I'm going to make some space in my script, and I'm going to do basically, in fact I could just copy and paste it from my other scripts. Let's do that. Let's go back to trigger audio, and we're going to copy lines 6 and 5. So we want this attribute here and this variable called event. So I'm going to hit Control C, go back to my other script and hit Control V, because we want to do the same thing. We want to select an event, we want to select an event within Unity, and then we want to tell this function to play it. So once we've copied and pasted that over, I'm going to give the play one shot function the name of the variable that is holding the name of the event I'd like to play, which is event. Finally, the last thing that the play one shot function needs is a place to play the sound in within the game world. Now, this isn't too important. Well, whilst the function needs it, we don't have to worry too much about where we tell it to play it, because again, we're working with 2D events. They're not 3D. There's not going to be any panning, information or volume or attenuation, depending on how close we are to the sound. It's just going to play in stereo if you're wearing 2 earphones or 2 speakers, for example, or mono if you're just listening out of a single one. Doesn't matter. So I'm just going to tell it to play in the very center of our game world. To do that, I need to create a vector. So to do that, we type in new vector3, and then we write 2 brackets. Then to tell it to play in the center of the game world, you just type 0, 0, 0. And basically you're saying play it at the coordinates of x0, y0, and z0. Okay? And that is literally it. We're good to go. So let's hit Control and S to save the script. Again, I'll have this script available on my website if you want to just copy and paste it. Okay, so let's go back into Unity. Now let's give it a second. We should see our variable we created called event appear here in the inspector tab under trigger audio animation. So I think it's nearly done now. Yes, there we go. Brilliant. Right, now we need to select an event. So I think for these, because these are for when we hover our mouse over a button, I'm going to use menu button 01. You can use 02. Well, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to use 01. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're done. You don't have to, but I am just going to hit Control S just because I get a bit paranoid nowadays that I haven't saved things and changes haven't been applied. And then really, that should be it. That should do it. So let's play our game and see if we hear a sound. Okay, so I'm going to hit escape. Pause my game, then I'm going to hover my mouse over options. Hey, we hear a sound. Now, what's interesting, if I hover my mouse over restart level, we also hear the sound. And the reason why is because all of these buttons are using the same animation controller. They're all using, I forgot what it's called now, menu start, I believe the controller was called. But they're basically all using this. So all of them are playing that normal animation, which is just that blank background brown image of the button, which we can see now. Then when we hover the mouse over, it's switching. Oh, there we go. It's switching the image to a highlighted grey one, and that's pretty much it. So we've got all our sounds. We've got a sound that plays whenever we open and close the menu. We've got sounds that play whenever we highlight our mouse over a button, and we've also got sounds that play whenever we press buttons. Pretty cool. Now, whilst that's pretty much it, there is one more menu in this game that you might want to add sounds to, which I'm going to quickly show you. Right, so I'm going to go to 2D Game Kit folder. I'm then going to go to Scenes, and I'm going to open up the Start Scene. And it's this menu here. Now, this menu, I believe, is already loaded up into the Start Scene. It's not going to load that UI menu scene when we play this one. So I think it's just Option Canvas Master. Yes, here we are. So it's already here. So what you can do is, just like before, you can open these up. You can find your buttons. Let's just open that up there. So audio, button, canvas, for example. Actually, let's see if we can try and find that start button. So where would that be? Oh, here we go. Start menu canvas. It's probably this one. Yes, I think I found it. So under menu background, start button, click on that. Yes, here we are. So there's the component button. So we know this is the button. And again, we've got an image, start menu, button default. There's also an animator with that start button controller. That might actually be a different controller. Let's quickly open it up. No, that's the same controller, so we should still hear those flicks when we highlight the button. But what we won't have, let's go back to it, but we won't have our sound that plays whenever we click on it, because as you can see, the on-click Unity event it's only got one behavior, and that's not one we've added. That's not one that's going to tell us sound to play. We also don't have our trigger audio component attached to it. So if you want, you can add sounds to this menu, but you know what? I don't think I'm going to show you how, because I think you've learned enough in this video. It's gone on long enough, and I'm sure you can figure it out. In fact, I'm going to challenge you. After you've watched this whole video, see if you can try and add the sounds to this menu here. I'm sure it's not that hard. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Yeah, cool. So that's everything. Great. Thanks for watching this video. As always, if you have any ideas or suggestions for things you'd like to see in the future, you know where the comment section is. Feel free to just chuck it down there. But yeah, I've been Henry Scott. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.